This is Baez, and today I continue my collaboration with Steve Schwartz over at LSAT blog. So last time he told me a little bit about the LSAT. So today we're reversing it. He's going to be interviewing me, and we're going to be talking about what you need to do to prepare for law school, what the first year of law school is like, those basic questions as you're thinking about law school, and what you need. So with that, Steve, take over.
Hi, it's great to be chatting with you again. I really enjoyed our previous conversation, and I was hoping to share some of your advice with my audience today, those who are looking to go to law school, those who are considering law school. So I was hoping if you could just give us a general overview. Let's say someone is in undergrad and they're thinking about law school, they're pre-law, maybe they're political science major, most likely, but what should they be thinking about in undergrad in terms of choosing their classes, in terms of orienting themselves the right way to succeed in law school?
Taught thousands of students, and you start asking people, what's your major? What do you end up in college? And of course, the vast majority are liberal arts majors. I mean, you get the occasional science guy or science woman, but most of the time it's liberal arts. Poli-sci, English, those sort of things. I was speech communications. We all come from the liberal arts. But what I have found, interestingly enough, the students that have had classes that mimic the law school experience tend to have a slight advantage. And I would say a slight advantage, not a huge advantage. So that tends to be the philosophy classes of all things, because they teach their classes just like we do in law school. Law school, we use the Socratic method, which is a question and answer approach. So I call on Mr. Schwartz, please tell me about the facts in, and I name a particular case. And we go back and forth. And the philosophy classes do that. So they get to a higher level of thinking than I think most other majors prepare you for. So even if you're not a philosophy major, I would take a couple of philosophy classes if you can. Now, you have to balance that. You need to make sure you get top grades, because when you look at law school admissions, it's based on LSAT and GPA, almost exclusively. So don't take a philosophy class, and end up with a C or D. Make sure you put the time and effort in it. But I think if you take a few, more than just the intro class, a couple of the upper level classes, I think you're going to start thinking a little bit differently.
That's a great idea. It's kind of funny. I've actually seen that those who tend to do the best on the LSAT are typically philosophy or physics majors. So both very challenging majors, tough classes, maybe tough to do well, but if you can, then it could help develop some of those skills. I'm wondering, what about the summer before law school? Let's say someone's finished senior year and they're looking ahead, they want to get a head start. What should they do?
The person who wants to get a head start needs to do that. So I'm on social media, and I see a lot of bad advice from other, current law students and people who are getting into law school. And here's the bad advice. The bad advice: hey, just spend the summer, have fun, go to Tahiti, whatever it is, travel around Europe. Don't think about law school. And I'll tell you that's a mistake. Now, I think you should take some time, go spend some time with the family, take a little bit of time off. But law school, it's a different game. What worked in college is not going to work in law school. And so the sooner you can start getting a law school mindset, the more likely you're going to get better grades. Because once you're in law school, the better jobs go to the top of the class. And the opportunities go to the top of the class, being on law review, being on moot court. So if you can leverage that, get a couple months head start, that's great. So how do you do that? So some people, they'll buy a couple books, and there's some out there. I don't want to recommend any now, because they keep changing every few years. So my recommended list changes. There are some, I think, great law school prep courses out there. So I've looked around. There are about 4 or 5. Some of them are a little bit better than others. And again, I'm not going to name them. But here's, I think, what you look for. When you're looking for a law school prep class, look for one that prepares you by giving you the skills you need. I think the ones that I think are weaker just sort of introduce you to the material. So you have some professor from some great law school who teaches you constitutional law, or at least an introduction to constitutional law, or torts or contracts. That's almost worthless. What you need is somebody who's going to teach you, how do I brief a case? How do I begin preparing for my final exams? Those are the skills that are important. That's what's going to get you to the top of the class, not knowing, a little bit of torts or contracts or property law.
That makes perfect sense. So you're saying look to develop the skills rather than just absorbing the content, the information. And how would you recommend that someone evaluate one of these law school prep courses to properly determine whether the course is teaching them skills or information? Is there a way to tell?
The ones that are poor, you look at, the descriptions, and they often will give you like a little preview, and you can quickly see, oh, this course is just teaching me property, contracts, the content of the courses, which again is worthless. The other ones actually will tell you, it's like, okay, we teach you case briefing, and you'll actually see skills, how to prepare for class, how to take notes. So if you start seeing the how questions rather than the what questions, you are finding the right kind of course.
That's excellent advice. Thanks for sharing that. I'm sure that my audience will find it valuable. What about once they're in law school? What about beginning first semester 1L? What's it going to be like for them? What's law school like? What does it actually cover? You mentioned some of the topics a little bit, but I'm sure a lot of people listening still don't know exactly what is a tort.
So law schools in America it's a very lockstep curriculum across the board. In most law schools, there's some small deviation, but generally you should expect in the first year to take the following classes: torts, contracts, civil procedure, property, maybe con law, maybe criminal law. More or less, those are the 5 or 6 courses. In many schools, they are year-long courses. So you'll take torts 1, torts 2. And torts, by the way, it's an old Norman French word, right? Because remember, the Normans conquered England in 1066. And so we're still using old Norman French. And modernly, we would just say personal injury law. So, what happens when somebody punches somebody else in the face? What happens when there's a car accident? What happens if you've been defamed? Those are all personal injuries. So that's primarily what I teach in the first year. Love teaching torts. So that's the content, and legal writing. There's always a legal writing class, which, by the way, is probably the most important class you'll take. It's a skills class. So most people think, well, the professors, the top professors are teaching torts, contracts. But where you're going to learn how to succeed, how to write, is going to be in legal writing. And the reason that's so important is because when I assess you, when your professor assesses you, your final exam, it's going to be a written exam. And it's going to be unlike anything you've seen before, which means from day one, you need to start thinking, keep the end in mind. The end is the final exam. What do I do from day one to prepare for that final exam?
So you're saying that legal writing is actually one of the more important courses, even though it's not really emphasized as much when people think about law school in general. Is that because maybe legal writing is what you actually practice no matter what when you're a lawyer?
Part of it is how law schools treat legal writing professors. So many schools, they're adjuncts. They're almost treated as secondhand or second-rate faculty. So there tends to be a revolving door. It's a lot of work. They're given a lot of work to do. They have a lot of grading, a lot of reading, and they get burnt out. And then generally they put the doctrinal faculty towards contracts, those professors, on a pedestal. So students see that and they go, oh, okay, this woman, she's a full professor with tenure, so she must be more important. And so you tend to view their status as making the course more important. And granted, they're important courses, they're foundational courses, but your grade is going to be dependent on how you write. And it's that legal writing instructor that's going to help you move to the top of the class.
And then legal writing also impacts your exam results, of course. It's all about the exam. So could you share a little bit about, aside from legal writing, what should students do to prepare for exams, especially 1L year fall semester when they're being thrown from the frying pan into the fire?
First of all, you need to understand what you did in college is not going to work in law school. It's a different approach completely. First, the time commitment. Some people who are listening to us now were able to get away with 15, 20 hours a week, and then hang out at the frat or hang out with the buddies, go to movies. No, that's not how it works. Expect to spend 50 to 60 hours a week. Now that includes, the time you spend in class, but this is a full-time job, 50 to 60 hours a week as a professional. If you're not spending that kind of time, you're unlikely going to be successful. So that's step one, recognizing the time constraints. Second is, once you understand the end game, it's that final exam, you have to understand, how am I being tested and how do I prepare for it? So they're essay exams, starting 2 weeks before finals to prepare, not going to work. It has to be something you start from day one. So outlining. So from day one, you're going to prepare for class. After each class, within 24 hours, you need to take what you learn in class and write a rule outline, where you take the 2, 3, 4 rules you learned in class that day and put them into an outline for each course. So in torts, I start off with the intentional torts. So you'll have a headline that says intentional torts. Then you'll have the individual torts, battery, false imprisonment, trespass, etc. And you're going to start filling that out. And the reason I say within 24 hours is because of the learning curve. Within 48 hours, you've lost almost everything you learned 48 hours earlier. So unless you reinforce it within 24 hours, you're going to have to relearn it. So it's a waste of time. You don't have the extra time to relearn all of a class 3 weeks before. So step one is outlining, a rule outline. Second, you got to practice your writing. So there are exercises you can do to start doing mini IRAC. And by IRAC, it's a standard way of organizing an essay exam. I issue, R rule, A application, C conclusion. And you need to start thinking that way. And that's the hard part. That's what takes most students a semester or 2 or 3 to master. And if you don't master that skill, you're not going to succeed. You're not going to get better grades. So it's starting to learn to think in terms of IRAC and doing exercises that get you into that mindset.
A skill. Once again, this is something that students could even practice the summer before 1L, correct?
Absolutely, yes. The sooner they start practicing it, because it's not automatic. So I'll tell you in my case, it took me 3 semesters. And I call it the aha moment. Everybody has this moment when they go, oh, that's what they want. Why didn't they tell me? Well, we were telling you, but it's because it's a different way of thinking. So in my 3rd semester of law school, all of a sudden, that's what they want. And my grades went up a full letter grade in all my classes. It had that kind of impact, just understanding. And it happens for different people at different times. Some it happens in the 1st semester. Those are the people who get the top grade. So if you can start practicing in May, you're hoping then by December, right, that you will have mastered the skill so that you can get one of those top grades, which will get you onto law review and get you the good jobs that we're all looking for.
That's really great to know. So this is a skill that you can actually walk into law school day one already knowing how to do it. And I'm sure it makes it so much easier if you start that process earlier.
So the earlier you start, because it just takes time. You're training your brain, and it's not something you can pick up in a week or 2 or 3. It just takes time.
I understand that you offer your tutoring and you have a course and you're going to have more courses. Can you share a bit more about what you do for law students and prospective law students?
So people tend to come to me. Now, I mean, I can help anybody at any point during their law school career. But what I tend to do is get people right around exam time. That's when people start having that freak out moment. And I start working with them, teaching them these skills that we're talking about now, because it's a learned skill. And unfortunately, many law schools, professors don't teach students these skills. And usually it's because most professors are judged by their peers and by the university by scholarship. So that means they lock their doors, they work from home because they have to write. It's either, it's the whole publish or perish. So if they're not writing, they're not going to get tenure, they're not going to get promoted. They're not, for some professors, they want to jump ship. They want to go to another law school. So they've got to keep publishing, which means they don't have time to teach students. So I take that time, and it does take time. So we go through exercises. If it's after exam, and I get a lot of people after their finals, so I'm dealing with a lot of students now at schools all over the place, right? So I'm dealing with students in the top 14, Harvard, Georgetown, and then schools, that are not as prestigious. So and they all have the same problem. How do I write a law school exam? And so I go through that with them. If they've got their final exam, we go through that. Some students pick up the skill quickly, and others need a little bit more help. And it just sort of depends where you are, what knowledge, skills, and abilities you came to law school with, and how quickly you pick this up. Because my goal is not to keep somebody dependent on my abilities. I am happy when somebody goes, oh, I've got it. I don't need to work with another tutor. Thank you so much, Professor Baez. That's my day. You have made my day when you have developed that skill. So that's my goal in doing my tutoring, is to get people to become independent of needing my work.
Well, it sounds like you offer a great service and a great resource for anyone applying to law school and planning what to do on that summer before 1L. And the biggest takeaway I got from our conversation is that it's not too early to start developing those skills. Even the summer before law school, you could save yourself so much trouble if you just master those skills like IRAC, the mini IRAC, before you even walk in the fall semester. So thank you, Professor Baez.
Thank you. I appreciate our chat and look forward to collaborating with you on something in the future. Take care, Steve.
Same.